Hi, everybody, and thanks for being on the webinar today. This is Elizabeth, the Manager of Grassroots Advocacy at NAC. And I am, for this webinar, since it's a small group of SLCs I see on the line, I am going to try to unmute everyone so that we can have discussion sort of over the phone as opposed to through the chat box. But if you have significant background noise in your office or wherever you are, please mute your own line. And if we do get a ton of background noise, I think we'll have to just mute everybody. But all right. Okay, I think we should be okay. So let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to the first of two SLC prep webinars for P&I. This one is going to be focused on what to do before you come to DC. And we will have the second of this series on March 16th, and that one will be heavily focused on a run-through of our policy papers, a little bit more about how to effectively use the state delegation meeting time, and how to have an effective conference once you are in town. I don't necessarily anticipate this taking the entire hour, so hopefully we can get you guys on your way a little bit earlier this afternoon, but we can go ahead and jump in. Pretty slim agenda today, just a couple of tips from us, from our perspective, and things that we request of you. And then I'm going to have Jordan and Kristen talk about what they do to get ready for the conference. If you were on this webinar last year, Jordan did an awesome presentation, and we've asked him to do it again. And then we can have a discussion and go over any questions folks have before we jump off here. So the first thing that you want to get a handle on in terms of the conference is who is actually coming to DC from your state. I know some folks have their own sort of registration or sign-up pages on their state association websites just to get an idea of which of your members are coming. Important to know that just so you can figure out will all of the districts or members of Congress that you've attempted to schedule meetings with be covered, and who will you anticipate being in those meetings and running point in those meetings, and who's going to just talk to which potential topic, that kind of thing. If you don't really have a good idea or don't have a good way of soliciting that feedback and information, we can help you with that. Amanda requested that you email her specifically just because we have to go through our meetings team, and with all the other things that they have going on, as you can imagine, that can be sort of a bit of a bear. So if you need that information and help from us, please do let Amanda know directly. And then think about convening a call and distributing any materials and give folks their marching orders on key meetings or all of the meetings or whatever information you think is necessary to get out to folks ahead of the conference, just so that everyone's on the same page. And again, you can use that state delegation meeting time most effectively. In terms of field visits, we advise the field that the SLCs and PCAs are really the ones who should be scheduling those meetings, and that is pretty much just so that there's one point of contact and there's no duplication of effort, and that you and the health centers and us don't look disorganized. And we really, when you're scheduling those meetings, ask you to push that they be at the member level, and one of the best hooks for that is using the congressional awards to leverage getting those members into the meetings and not just having staff. And Amanda sent out, I know, the list of congressional awards Monday or Tuesday, sometime earlier this week. So be sure to check that and see which of your members are getting awards from us this year, and really use that to entice the member to be in your meetings. If you absolutely can't get the member, staff is completely fine. We always tell folks that staff are the eyes and ears of the member, so there's really nothing wrong with that. But we do tend to get a lot more members at P&I because of the congressional awards. And so that we can sort of have a handle on which meetings are going on, we ask that you let us know what you have scheduled by March 14th. There might be some offices that are really stragglers and don't get back to you until the last possible minute. So, if you get info and intel after the 14th, absolutely, please still share that with us. But we ask that you make a good effort to get us all of that stuff before March 14th. And that is so we can not only get a handle of, which meetings are happening, but at the staff level here, we divide up the meetings based on some of the programs that we're working on and the regions that we're working in, and that is not necessarily to be, to be a big brother type. We really just are there to be a fly on the wall and, listen to what the members have to say or what the staff have to say, and that is not so that we can take over the meeting or, report back to NAC that, such and so-and-so said something and, all of that. It really is meant to just be sort of a learning experience for some of the staff here and our federal affairs team. And also think about the different messaging that you want to put out there for each member. In the SLC packets that will be distributed at the SLC meeting, which is on the Tuesday before the conference really gets underway, there will be a Member of Congress profile for each member, and that has information like what committees they're on, I think some of their support in the past so that you can see sort of where they stand on our major issues. But if there are other issues that you think would be a good hook for them, please be sure to do that research ahead of time so that you can come to the conference being able to speak to those as well. And another plug, because I'm sure you haven't heard it enough, is for the Medicaid and CLIP impact calculators that we have on the Make the Case webpage. And I didn't put that on here, but it's hcadvocacy.org/makethecase. And it's critical for you to use them to produce statewide data, but also that the folks that are who are planning on coming to the conference also do that for their specific health center, so that you guys can coordinate and use those data and figures and make the case, as it were, in the best way and most effective way possible. And if you haven't taken a look at those yet, they're pretty simple. It's an Excel spreadsheet that you open, you type your numbers in, and it spits you out a pretty nifty looking infographic. So use those and talk them up with your members as well. In terms of state-based data and materials, we will provide you, as I said, the SLC packets like we do every year that have our policy information and policy papers. It'll have the research briefing that we're putting together. Our amazing research team is working hard on that right now. It'll have the leave behind materials. I'm trying to think what else. They also have some sort of admin stuff in there too, how to get in touch with our team, what not to bring to the Hill. But, and I know Jordan's going to speak to this, please do think about including some state-based data and materials that will, again, help you make the case beyond what we will provide you at the federal level. We do ask that you please don't bring or, plan to give them any materials that are going to conflict with our agenda. It doesn't necessarily always, make for the most united front. We don't want to present anything that's going to be detrimental to the overall program or cause any confusion, when there are states making specific requests. If you have any questions on that, please feel free to contact Amanda directly, and she will be more than happy to chat with you about that. In terms of key dates and deadlines, just a quick rundown. We do, as I said, ask that you submit your Hill visits to us by Tuesday, March 14th. Again, if you have some that come in afterwards, please fill us in about those as well, but the 14th is really the deadline we want to shoot for. Be sure to tune in to our next monthly policy and advocacy update webinar, and that's going to be on Tuesday, March 21st, so that's essentially the week before the conference starts at 3:30 in the afternoon. And whereas the last couple have been focused on some of our big policy topics, this one is really going to be focused on the conference, both what folks who are coming to DC should be planning and also what folks at home who are not coming to the conference can do and should be planning to do. And then plan on attending that SLC meeting on Tuesday the 28th, and that's from 7 to 8 in the, 7 to 8:30 in the evening after a long day. So we're going to try to keep it short and sweet and just tell you what you need to know and pass out those SLC packets as well. So that is really all that I have from our side, but now I would love to turn it over to Jordan from the Illinois Primary Healthcare Association to give his take on what to do to have a successful P&I. So let me switch the ball over to Jordan here. There you go.
All right, thank you, Elizabeth. And as Elizabeth stated, I gave a similar presentation last year, so I apologize for those of you who are going through this for a second time. However, I do hear there are some new state legislative coordinators, so I hope some of you find this information useful. What I'm going to briefly discuss today is everything that we do here in Illinois to prepare for P&I all the way up to the state delegation meeting. As Elizabeth said, I think it's really critical to be as prepared as possible prior to arriving in D.C. to really have a smooth state delegation meeting and productive meetings with your members of Congress. It's also important because there always seems to be last-minute changes, and I've experienced this every year since I started. Maybe a member of Congress wants to reschedule a meeting, or maybe one of your key health center advocates missed their plane. Last year, as we were heading over to the Hill, I had a member unexpectedly show up. He decided the night before that he wanted to come, and he wanted to know where he needed to go. So by being prepared, we were able to address those issues quickly. One thing that is new this year, and I'm sorry this is probably a little difficult to see, but this is our advocacy plan that we distributed to our members in late January. Hopefully you can see at the top it says it's our advocacy plan for February through March, and I limited it to 2 months because I really wanted members to focus on advocacy actions that they could take prior to P&I. We have really emphasized here in Illinois getting members of Congress into a health center prior to our meetings. We've supplied our members with talking points, and one thing that Elizabeth mentioned about the health center funding cliff impact statement and the Medicaid impact statement, we actually did those for all of our members. This year's is kind of different than other years, and it's really important, so we took it upon ourselves to do that for our members. We've also encouraged our members to build their own advocacy capacity, as well as get letters of support from state legislators, and that's what we're working on right now, and we hope to have a stack of letters to hand to our members of Congress in D.C. These are things that you can still get done before P&I. It's not too late. In fact, we have members of Congress who will be in health centers in Illinois this weekend. But kind of taking a step back to the basics of P&I planning, one of the first things that we do is we send out RSVPs to all of our members 2 to 3 months in advance, usually around December. And on the form, and I have templates if anyone is interested, we ask if they're going to attend P&I, if they will be participating in Hill visits, or if they're not attending at all. I like to know if they're not attending so I can pick up the phone and call them and ask them why, especially this year. If they are attending, we ask them to list any staff or board members that will be with them. We like to know their arrival and departure dates and their cell phone numbers. We ask for their cell phone numbers for internal use only in case there are schedule changes or other reasons that a meeting time or location will change. For example, at my first P&I, it was a fire drill or a fire alarm was pulled, so one of our meetings had to be rescheduled, but by having those cell phone numbers, I was able to contact those in that particular meeting and let them know of the schedule change. We like to remind our members constantly about P&I and the importance of attending, and in all of our email and monthly publications and our legislative updates and our committee packets. We encourage our members to participate and to RSVP as soon as possible. We usually get a pretty good response, and by this point in time, we have a pretty good idea who's going to be out there with us in D.C. Next, we schedule all of our own meetings on the Hill, kind of like Elizabeth suggested. For us, it's just so much easier for one person to schedule the meetings, especially since we always prefer to have a PCA staff member in attendance of each meeting. We typically reach out to the congressional schedulers and staff about a month in advance, so we've already done that this year. A lot of our congressional offices, and perhaps some of you have experienced the same, they won't schedule meetings until a week in advance or two, but we haven't had any issues scheduling all of our meetings at least 1 week in advance. Moving on, prior to the state delegation meeting, we prepare a lot of materials for our members, and we put them into a 1-inch binder that they are handed at the state delegation meeting, and that's just a picture of the binder that we hand out. Our binders include the Hill meeting schedule, which I'm going to share with you guys in just a few moments, NAC's talking points and materials such as position papers or any letters we are trying to get signatures on, our talking points, which discuss the number of patients we serve and the number of FQHC sites in Illinois. There's also a statewide UDS and economic engine report that we provide. We include all of the biographies for our members of Congress and their district maps with FQHC sites. There's also a building map, so my members know where they're going. I think that's important to have. Finally, we hand out advocacy guidelines so that our members know how to act in a meeting. It seems like common sense that you wouldn't pick up your phone in a meeting or just walk out of a meeting when a member of Congress is speaking, but we have had that happen before, so I'd like to have those guidelines sent out. We send out all of this information at least 1 week in advance electronically. I ask our members to review their materials and to become familiar with them, and that really makes for a much better delegation meeting since a lot of questions that members have or any confusion, it's already resolved. Almost everything that they need to know is within that binder. Instead of carrying all of these 1-inch binders out to DC with us, because we usually have a minimum of 50 to 75, we ship them in advance to the conference hotel. And they actually have a FedEx that's located within the hotel, and it's very easy to get what you need. If you're worried about after hours of the FedEx, you can actually contact the hotel and they'll have a security staff member open up the FedEx for you. So you don't have to worry about not getting your materials. Next, I'm going to share, this is just the 1 page of our 2-page schedule. We have the member of Congress listed, their staff member's name and title, if they've received a NAC legislative award, and if they previously signed the Health Center appropriations letter. I think the most helpful part of this schedule is under the Community Health Center intro and funding or FY17 budget columns. There I have listed who is speaking, so which member is speaking in that meeting. I think this is really helpful so that when we go into a meeting, we have a game plan. Members aren't staring at each other, wondering who's going to speak first. It's a lot less awkward. Now, most times other attendees of the meetings will speak, and that's perfectly fine, but this at least provides a framework and it makes for a much better meeting. Again, this is sent out a week in advance, so our members already know what their role will be, and by the time they get to DC, they should already know or have a pretty good idea of what to say. Here's a biography of one of our members of Congress. A lot of FQHCs will already know about their member of Congress, but if you have someone who is new, I think this is useful, and I'm so happy to hear that NAC is actually going to be providing congressional profiles of members. I think that will be really helpful. This is the same member's map with the Community Health Center sites. We develop these internally. In the past, NAC has developed maps, and when they do, we actually use NAC's maps instead. But this shows our members where their state sites are within each district, and they can in turn share that information with their member of Congress. And we get requests from our members of Congress for these maps all the time. So they're not just helpful for P&I, they're helpful for all of your advocacy efforts. We also hand out materials to our members of Congress. We give them the maps with the sites. We have all the NAC materials. As Elizabeth stated, we are there to promote NAC's agenda, the federal agenda, not our own personal agenda. So anything that NAC suggests, anything that they give us in terms of the position papers or anything extra that they might give us at the state legislative coordinators meeting, on Tuesday evening, we make sure that we include those. We always take 2 copies, one for the member of Congress and one for their staff, and we also ship these out to the hotel with the binders. So that's all I have, but basically I'd just like to say that once we get to DC, I feel that we are really prepared and that we have everything in order for the most part. Any last-minute changes are easily addressed, and our delegation meeting is a breeze. I don't think our delegation meeting has ever gone longer than 25, 30 minutes, and probably less than that. I have my contact information up here. If anyone is interested in our templates, our schedule, or anything that I discussed, feel free to shoot me an email. You can call me at any time, and I'm happy to provide you with whatever I can. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Jordan. That was incredibly helpful. And I think you make a really good point, which is the more work you can do leading up to the conference, the less you have to worry about scrambling at the state delegation meeting, and you can get out early and go enjoy a nice dinner somewhere in DC. So now I'm going to turn it over to Kristen. Kristen, can you hear us?
I can hear you, yeah. Can you hear me?
All right, yes.
Okay,
go right ahead.
Great. So, hi everyone. I'm with the North Carolina Primary Care Association, called the North Carolina Community Health Center Association. And in preparing for P&I, we do many of the same things that Jordan and folks in Illinois do as well. We divide up the work within our office. We kind of have a team meeting. We had one early in January to discuss who will be taking on which roles and have a spreadsheet that we developed to say who's doing what. And then we check in periodically on where we are with the different materials and preparation. We have one person who is responsible for scheduling, and similar to Jordan, we at the PCA schedule all the meetings, and we make it very clear with our members that we prefer that they not schedule meetings outside the meetings that we're scheduling. If they want to go back after our meeting, they can try to drop in, but we want to make sure that we get as many folks at a meeting with a specific congressman, so we don't want any competition really for that meeting, and we want to make sure we can keep everyone on point and on the same message. So we have someone in our office who schedules the meetings and does all the follow-up, and she's the key contact for, if there are any changes for the time or the meeting location, which we have had happen even as much as the morning of the Capitol visit day. So it's really important that that person is connected with the staff at the congressional offices so we can adjust as needed. And we develop a memo for our members that we send out with basic logistical information as well as kind of key talking points and things that we're going to be talking about in the meeting. So letting them know whether or not you're coming to the conference, we need you to be, there for the state delegation meeting on Wednesday. Here's the time it will be. In fact, we send it out before we even know which time. We've generally been scheduled for the same time for our state delegation meeting, and make sure they have that, and as well as, any other key P&I meetings, the kind of rah-rah head to the hill meeting that happens Wednesday early in the day. We make sure to include that to encourage our members to attend that if they are attending the conference as well. And we make sure on that memo also to include cell phone numbers of all the staff at the PCA who will be attending. And that's helpful because we do have folks who will get lost or, lose some of their materials and don't know where a meeting will be or what time it is, that sort of thing, so they can communicate with us. I think one of the things that's important, as we're developing our materials, we really also do try to make very state-specific materials. So we, use a lot of the NAC materials and then make them state-specific. One thing that we developed 2 years ago and are doing again this year is a memo on the funding cliff and the impact for North Carolina. So it's pretty much just taking that, funding cliff calculator, doing it for the state at the state level, and then we developed, a memo just describing the issue. We have, the graph that that NAC put together of where the funding for the discretionary and the mandatory funding for the health centers program comes from, and kind of how you see that loss when when the funding cliff happens. And we include that. So if anyone is interested in seeing that memo that we put together, I'm happy to share that with you. That's one of the things we include. in our materials. This year we're going to be doing a one-page kind of infographic document that talks about the community health centers in North Carolina, but we also have a standard 8-page pamphlet that we hand out that's about the community health centers in North Carolina, and we make sure to include that in all of the packets. We're also working on developing some district-specific information on the funding cliff, so using that funding cliff calculator and the Medicaid impact statement to try to develop some district-specific information for our representatives. So we'll be working on that as well as the state-level information. Other things that we include, we always include in our members packets, so for all the health centers that are attending, we include a request to take photos and say, please share them with us later. We want to make sure we can use those via social media either the day of, and we always include whatever the NAC hashtag is for P&I on that sheet of paper. So say, please, feel free to share your photos and use this hashtag so we can get folks engaged on social media. And if they don't engage in social media themselves, we always ask them to email us their photos. So when we get back from DC, we try to do some posting on our social media showing photos from our visits. Another thing that we do for our members is we also provide them with information about how the congressman has voted. So this year we'll be saying, back 3 years, how many times that congressman has signed on to the health center support letter and whether or not they voted in favor or not for HR 2, the funding for macro that included the 2 years of additional community health center funding. And we include that not to say whether or not our member is supportive, but as a way for our health center members to say to the congressman, thank you. And we encourage them to say, thank you. Last year you signed the health center support letter. Would you please sign again? Or the past 3 years you've signed the health center support letter. Would you please sign again? It also helps. We find that among our delegation, it can be very influential if they know if another member has signed the health center support letter. So we'll say, oh, this other congressman from your party has signed the health center support letter this year and last year. Would you like to sign as well? And that has really helped us. Last year we had some additional sign-ups, folks signing on the health center support letter that hadn't in the past. And I think that was because they felt encouraged that other members in their party were supportive as well. So we provide that information for our health center members when they're making that ask, if we know that the congressional delegation member has not yet confirmed that they plan to sign on. And we usually get a few people that wait until the day of P&I to say whether or not they're willing to sign that Dear Colleague Health Center support letter. I'm just trying to look at my notes and see what other materials. We also send out emails to the Health LA in each office in advance and say, we're looking forward to meeting with you. Our members will be there in 2 weeks. The date is scheduled. The time is scheduled on this time. Here are some things we want to talk about so that they know in advance what we're wanting to discuss and they're well prepared for that. We don't want to surprise them with, oh, the health center funding cliff, or, oh, you may not have realized how changes to the Medicaid program may impact health centers. We want them to be able to look at that in advance. So we do share an email with them in advance and let them know what we'll be coming to focus on. And at the state delegation meeting, of course, we always make sure to let our members know to really stay focused on our health center members, to really stay focused on the meeting on the asks that are at hand. We try to keep them very limited, whatever NAC is asking us to talk about, and we try to make sure that they not get distracted. We encourage them to really focus and make sure those asks happen. We also assign one health center member to be the lead, so they're the lead for that meeting, and we ask them to make sure to get those asks, whether it's signing the Dear Colleague support letter or whether it's making sure we hit the talking points of the funding cliff and how important Medicaid is to the community health centers program. They're kind of responsible for that, and other people can add in information that supports those top topics. And then we also always have a PCA, at least one member from, or one staff person from the PCA in attendance, but we really try not to be the ones talking. We're only there if additional support and information is needed, or if it's a really small meeting and for some reason there aren't a lot of health centers in that district, we can help provide information. But we really want it to be our members who are giving the information and sharing their experiences at the meetings. So, and we also just, I noted that Jordan mentioned shipping the binders to the hotel. That's also something that we do. We have, well, we don't get as fancy as binders, but we have folders designated for the senators, for the representatives. We have folders for our members. We have folders for our PCA staff, all with very similar but slightly tailored information. And we make sure we also ship all of that to FedEx at the hotel as well, which has been very convenient for us in the past and well worth it rather than making someone drive when they otherwise would have flown or, you know, trying to get them on the plane. So that's been effective. I hope that's helpful. It's not too much different from what Jordan does. We've certainly learned from what he does, and I always appreciate hearing him share what they do so we can try to do things a little bit better as well the next year. So thanks very much, everyone.
Thanks, Kristen. And just 2 points I wanted to follow up on. The first is, if you are not going to be in town by the time the SLC meeting rolls around on Tuesday, please let me know and we can make alternative arrangements. That usually works out to being, you know, us leaving the packets at the Marriott front desk for you. But otherwise, do plan to pick those up on Tuesday evening because there's really no other group meeting before state delegation meetings or Hill Day where we will be able to distribute them sort of en masse. And the other thing is, you mentioned, Kristen, the Dear Colleague letters. Those are in the works, and we will have those again this year. The timing looks about right for having, you know, getting some more commitments during P&I, but we'll have, it looks like we'll have enough lead time ahead of the conference to get a bunch of folks on board already so that you can start your meeting by saying thank you. And so know that's coming, and we will certainly be in touch as soon as those are ready to go out the door to you. And that is really all we had. Thank you so much to Jordan and Kristen. If anyone has any questions, I realize that most folks are actually connected via the computer. So if you have any questions at all, please type them in the chat box on the side there, and we will we'll answer them for you. One thing I will say is if you have questions specific to the calculators, those estimators, the Medicaid and CLIF pieces, please feel free to reach out to me, but I'm probably going to direct you over to our research team if you have questions about which numbers go where or any of that. But certainly no wrong door here, so feel free to email any of us. All right, I'm not seeing any questions come through, but as always, we are here, grassroots@NAC.com, or any of us that you want to reach out to directly for questions or concerns about the conference. But do plan on joining us on the 16th for the next one of these about how to make it an effective conference in DC. And other than that, I will let everyone out early to enjoy the afternoon. Thanks, everyone. We'll be in touch soon. Bye-bye.